President Muhammadu Buhari is assuring Nigerians that he is committed to saving lives and securing the properties of Nigerians amidst the issues of violence and security challenges in some parts of the country. And the Buhari presidency has published a checklist of what it is doing to combat the COVID-19 pandemic. Tonight we assess the efforts. Hello everyone and welcome to the program. This is Politics Today live on Channels Television. I'm Sean Kimbaloye in Lagos. Security appears to be a matter of great concern to President Muhammadu Buhari and appears to be assuring that the nation that they are secured. President Buhari says he is committed to securing the lives and property of Nigerians. The president's position was conveyed by the National Security Advisor, Muhammadu Bungono, while briefing State House correspondents after the meeting of the National Security Council at the Aso Rock Villa.
Good morning. Today's meeting basically started with a brief by the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, who, as you know, is the chairman of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19. He gave a comprehensive brief on the gains made so far, highlighting areas of concern, areas which need to be addressed, as well as making projections for the next couple of weeks. I, as the National Security Advisor, presented a couple of memos to Council in relation to the current security challenges faced by Nigeria. And of course, these are issues that revolve around the insurgency in the northeast, armed banditry, emergence of all kinds of groups that are not essentially bona fide.
Wherever you may be, if your hands are maybe not too busy, you might spare some clap for our military and those who are fighting in the forefront against insurgency. We understand there's been Boko Haram and insurgents are being hit hard in some parts of the northeast region. We take a second to clap for our military with their gallantry and efforts in fighting the insurgents in some part of the country. We take a moment on the program. We have some more information for you on our political roundup. Watch.
The Minister of Finance, Mrs. Zainab Ahmed, has met with the leadership of the National Assembly alongside some representatives of the executive arm of government on the amendment of the 2020 budget. The meeting is coming a day after the Federal Executive Council approved a loan request of $1.2 billion to set up 632 agricultural service centers across the country. The Council also approved $25 per barrel of crude oil as benchmark with production projection of 1.94 million barrels per day, amongst others. The meeting is to harmonize the indicators as reviewed by the executive due to the impact of the coronavirus. The federal government is again reassuring Nigerians that it remains committed to cushioning the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic in the country, as the government says it targets 3.1 million children in the homegrown school feeding program. Speaking at the official flag-off of the modified homegrown school feeding program in Abuja, the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development, Ms. Sadiya Umar Farouk, explains that the federal government is addressing the issue of hunger, which is a serious byproduct of the pandemic. The minister assures Nigerians that the government will continue to fund the homegrown school feeding program, as it targets feeding 3.1 million school children. The Edo State Governor, Godwin Obaseki, has approved an Incident Action Plan document for COVID-19 as approved by the response team, which contains a record of all its activities since its inauguration. The Commissioner for Health, Dr. Patrick Okundia, said the state government had come up with a plan since the inception of coronavirus in the state to deal with the spread of the pandemic. He added that the present stage of the COVID-19 plans focuses more on screening and testing for the virus across the 18 local government areas.
get more people out of the community who will be screened, and they come out positive, we bring them out and isolate and treat.
The coronavirus has left the world in great despair, and the government of Nigeria says it has plans to tackle the emergency situation now and later. The presidency has released a plan on the measures taken by President Muhammadu Buhari to absorb the impact of the coronavirus pandemic on the lives of Nigerians. A statement from the president's spokesperson, Mr. Efemi Adesina, outlines some of the president's initiatives to include the setting up of an economic team headed by the Minister of Finance and Budget and National Planning to examine the impact of COVID-19 on the economy. An economic sustainability committee headed by the vice president has been also set up to define a post-COVID-19 economy for Nigeria, as well as a task force on free movement of farm produce headed by the Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development. The president's media aide adds that there are plans to tackle weak health systems and infrastructure through establishment of standard laboratories, intensive care units, and isolation centers in all states of the Federation. Also, a fiscal sustainability plan to complement the suite of monetary and banking interventions was recently announced by the Central Bank of Nigeria, while a mass agricultural program is also to be put in place. Let's analyze all of these, everyone. Take a deeper look into all of these plans and where you stand as a citizen of Nigeria. Does the plan of the president fit into your plan as a citizen? What does this mean for you? I have joining me tonight in my panel from our Abuja studio, Mr. Kasim Afegbua, a communications expert, policy analyst. He was also the spokesperson of the PDP presidential campaign organization. And with him is Mr. Iko Sami, he's a policy analyst as well and a chieftain of the APC. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming onto the program. If you look at what we showed you, that's from the presidency. That's what the president says he's planning now and later. Looking at the plans, let me begin with you, Mr. Afegbua. Looking at the plans listed by the president, how would you assess it in the overall?
Well, thank you, Sheung, and thank you, our viewers back home. I don't have problem with plans. Plans are meant to be written down. What I have problem with, oftentimes, is implementation of your plans. Do you have the political will to implement some of these plans? Even though some of the items, enunciated overlap with state government functions. Like, for example, you're talking about opening up the rural roads. That shouldn't be the responsibility of the federal government. The rains are coming. I don't know when you are going to embark on rural roads. When the dry season was here, you didn't do so much. Now that the economy is in doldrums and our income has dropped and will drop further because of a shortfall in oil prices, I don't know where we are going to have the money to carry out capital projects with respect to open up the rural roads and agriculture and what have you. And don't forget that even when our crude oil was selling for $56, $58, and $60 per barrel, capital expenditure was in the realm of 38% or 30% in terms of execution. So it is good to plan. That is the hallmark of responsible leadership, is the hallmark of nations that want to progress. But how much of political will do you have to implement your plans becomes another issue altogether. So for me, I'm not excited anyway by what the federal government has put forward. You set up an economic team and you put the Minister of Finance. I was expecting that you would choose an independent person who can speak facts to figures and interrogate government processes, and not necessarily one of your appointees who will not want to derive from your own plans, in looking at the economy of the country. I was expecting that you take somebody from the private sector as head of your economic team so that they can interrogate figures, interrogate outcomes, and be able to put together a policy framework that will help to mitigate the impact of this COVID-19 or post-COVID-19 era Nigeria. Nigeria, as we are now, is an awkwardly overgrown adult that is struggling to walk straight. Even the palliatives they talk about, we couldn't feel the impact. Nigerians have been kept at home for quite some time. We didn't see palliatives. Students are at home. You tell us you are doing a school feeding program. How much of impact are you going to get from all of these shoddy preparations?
Mr. Ikosami, let's get your reaction to what Mr. Afegbua said on the plans of the federal government.
You know, clearly, we're a government of plans. We always make sure we set our plans before we do anything. First and foremost, if you don't plan your policies and programs, you plan to fail. And I just want to highlight on the issue of what Mr. Afegbua mentioned about rural roads. Virtually, if you look at all our federal roads across the country, you discover that they are connected to one ward or the other. And we have how many? We have 36 states with the FCT connecting all the states. There is no way you can travel 100 kilometers, you will not be able to at least cross several other rural areas. However, all these rural areas we're talking about, these are where the agro activities are taking place. So it is pertinent for government to ensure that they fund this thing. There is an intervention every federal government needs to do because the state might not have the strength and the energy to be able to go on. The federal government has to intervene to ensure that these roads are motorable so that goods and farm produce will be able to ship around. That's one. On the issue of home feeding program that Mr. Afegbua spoke about, if you take an example with the state like Ogun, which is still going now, for the children that are home, there's a statistic in schools that this statistician went to these states, they took data and these foods are getting into our homes. When you're inside Abuja, you'll not be able to feel the impact as much because this is actually target for the whole Nigeria. And basically, if you are in Abuja, if you are center in Abuja as well, you'll not be able to feel it as well until you move to the suburbs of Abuja where people are actually feeling this impact, just like we saw in other places. However, if you look at all the programs that the president stated, from the economic team set by Zainab, she's an excellent, a brilliant woman heading our Ministry of Finance, we actually inculcate advocacy in in our APC government. If you are advocating for anything that you feel that is going to bring good ideas from private sector, of course you are welcome. There is no minister in this country that is not welcoming any outside idea, which is the private sector. Besides, we have the Economic Sustainability Program, which is headed by Mr. Vice President. And there are a lot of private sector people there giving fantastic ideas, and it's ongoing. They are harmonizing all these policies to ensure that the government, the populace of the country are feeling this particular impact of this economic reform. And if you look at the policy, or even the CBN policy that I just started now, announcing issuing out loans. They advertise they are giving loans from small scale, medium scale enterprise. People could apply for small loans. They even waive business plan for you. You can apply in respective state. All I'll do, I'll just call on our state governors around the country to ensure that this particular policy gets into Nigerians' ears because it's for the whole country. The propagation needs to be more. But that's a policy that is going to help the private sector because a lot of private sector businesses have closed down. And on the issue of government side, have you ever seen any time of this government, any month that this government hasn't paid salary? You can imagine there is no month, even with the decline in our resources and our income, salaries and revenues that we are managing with the little, they are paying salaries. And states are ongoing. So public sector is well taken care of. The private sector, there's an intervention now. And if you look at all this harmonized policy, you can understand that the president is feeling the impact of this thing, and he wants to make sure Nigerians feel that touch at the end of the post-COVID-19 so that we can have a stable country and everybody will be happy for it. We are feeling the impact. It's an international crisis. We know a pandemic similar to this happened in 1918. 20-something million people died. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of people around the world. But Nigeria, if you look at the mortality rate in the country and compare our preparations and what we are doing right now, you should be able to applaud this government in what we are doing. What we can only push, which we are advocating, even us within the party, is that state government should key in and ensure that these policies, especially when it comes to health infrastructure, that federal government have put in every state, ensure that these services are actually transmitted to secondary centers and primary centers within your state so that everyone with any slight infection or symptom will be able to enjoy this care within the period. So if you look at all this, you discover that the president policy are clearly reading the entire cause of Nigerians, the challenges
Let's take a breather.
That's why it is unfair
but obviously,
for any other person to
there are
feel that
about 3 vulnerabilities that we have seen in the emergence of this health emergency in our national life. The issue of production, the issue of revenue, and the fact that our health institution is but a disaster. How do we fix and reset this? We come back and discuss the COVID-19 emergency situation in the country and how the Buhari government is tackling it, and of course, the post-COVID Buhari plan. That's after the break, everyone. Join us again. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us. Let's get back to the conversation. My partner tonight on the program, Mr. Kasim Afegbua, is a former spokesperson of the PDP Presidential Campaign Organization, and Mr. Sule Ikosami is an APC chieftain and, of course, a policy analyst. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for talking to us tonight. Let me come back to you, Mr. Afegbua. I mentioned 3 areas. In fact, the Vice President has said the pandemic gives Nigeria a very good opportunity to reset critical areas of the national economy, the critical areas of social services, and the health system in Nigeria. Obviously, the health emergency around the world has opened our vulnerabilities in the country. Before we look at the plans of the post-COVID, let's look at what is being done presently. Are you impressed considering the fact that the president is being able to delegate responsibility? The vice president is doing some things. The minister of agri, the minister of finance. Are you impressed with the organization of the Buhari government on this?
Well, let me say, Shegun, that I'm surprised that it is only in an era of pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, that even the Secretary to Government of the Federation, had to realize that the health sector has been a disaster. There is no further confirmation of the incompetence, incapacity, and non-performance of this government with respect to the health sector. Bearing in mind that they've spent about 5 years now in the saddle of leadership. That is one. Secondly, you see, thank God for COVID. They would have been telling us that they have made a lot of appreciable impact in the health sector. And now, talking about COVID, ask yourself, how many testings have we carried out in the last 2 months? We've been kept at home. How many people have you tested? What are the equipment you've gotten? How much money have you spent? The other day, they asked the health minister, how much do you pay for hazard allowance? He said he doesn't know. Another time, they asked the chairman of the Presidential Task Force on COVID, the secretary to the government of the federal, Boss Mustafa, how much have you received as grant donations and all that? He doesn't know. We don't know. Everything is operated within, some level of secrecy, and that cannot help a government that prides itself as anti-corruption government. That's one. Secondly, 2 years ago, we got $321 million Abacha loot, and they squandered that money, to some nameless Nigerians in the name of conditional cash transfer. Ask them to provide the data, because every country works on data. Ask them to provide the data for the distribution of that money. They will tell you that, no, we don't want their names to be mentioned and all of that. But you need data to plan. You're talking about planning. You don't have data. And so, what if this government was a thinking government, if this government was a creative one that has initiative to provoke some innovations, they should have expended $321 million, which was about 120 billion naira, in building or fixing the health sector. They're taking into account that from the president down to ministers and all of that, they're all engaged in medical tourism. So what are we talking about? You have misplaced priorities, you have resources that are scarce to find, you are making recoveries from EFCC and all of that, yet these sectors are not being funded. And year in, year out, you roll out budgets, you roll out bogus figures, at the end of the day, you cannot service your budget. Now you're talking about budget 2020. You want to do a revision. What you could do is to reduce by 71 billion naira. How much is that? When oil was selling for $58 per barrel, your budget was 10.523 billion, 10.571 billion. Now you reduce it to 5.23. At the end of the day, how will you get the resources to fund your budget. Your capital expenditure in the last 4 years has been a miasma of misplaced priorities. They hardly spend 40%. 40%. They hardly spend 40% on capital. But
Let me bring Mr. Aiko Sami to Let me bring Mr. Aiko Sami to react to some of the things that you've said. Mr. Aiko Sami, please react to what Mr. Afegbua has said. Do you think that what the president and his team have laid on the ground is enough to absorb these shock waves that the pandemic has unleashed upon us?
Very well. And you have to consider one thing, Shehu. The decline in oil revenue is across the entire world. We should even be lucky to have a crude now going for $25. However, basically, if you look at the population of this country, the size, the investment the federal government has done in every tertiary hospital around the country. There is no state in this country that doesn't have a tertiary center, either a teaching hospital or a medical center or a specialist hospital. Federal government, if you look at the budget, in the last 10 years, it's very simple. Access will be able to see what percentage of the actual funding, because budget is a plan. Remember, we set out a plan, that's the budget. It's not that the money is there, and as the revenue is accruing, you are expanding. And you have to understand that in the previous government, which I don't want to dabble into it, practically has not invested anything in the health sector. If you look at the percentage this government has actually invested, let me tell you, Shehu, I have seen several isolation centers built around our federal institutions that have been given mandate to complete it within 4 weeks. Remember, and I've seen several laboratories and isolation units as well. Remember, this hospital have distance, but it's overwhelmed because of our population. But federal government, considering the pandemic and the normal Nigerian feeling that the moment there is a test for maybe COVID here, people might not decide to go there. You could see some patients.
Because I wanted you to react to some of the issues raised, some of the questions and posers from Mr. Afegbua. He has raised some issues regarding the 5 years of this government. He made some allusions or assertions. Could you react to some of the... He said there's been a disaster in the last 5 years. Nothing has been done. Would you react to that?
He raised the issue concerning a statement. He raised the issue concerning our budget being slashed down. The revenue has gone down. The income has gone down. Certainly, the budget has to go through a review. He mentioned the secretary to the federal government, who has doing excellently well in this COVID issue. He has said that he has made lamentation over deteriorating effect. But he has forgotten the fact that since the inauguration of this particular government in 2015, it has been fighting to ensure that we have proper wage for our health staff, proper and prompt payment of our health workers in our hospitals around the country, upgrade in most of our hospitals around the country. And I need you to understand one thing. The federal government can only build a tertiary hospitals and states around the country. The state governments are there. They have budgets also for health. And I can pick some few states for you and mention to you, which are APC and PDP, and compare some of the things they've done with the health sector. So we're talking as if we're making a discussion as if the entire health sector in the whole of Nigeria is governed by the federal government. No. We have 3 tiers of government, and the state government are also performing. If you compare most of the health, there are secondary centers all around the country.
We are obviously out of time now. I must sincerely thank you, Mr. Sule Aiko Sami and Mr. Kasim Afegbua, for your submissions tonight on the program. Sincerely appreciate your time tonight. Mr. Kasim Afegbua, communications expert and presidential PDP Presidential Campaign Organization spokesperson. Mr. Aiko Sami, APC chieftain and a policy analyst. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time. Well, that's our show for tonight, everyone. Many thanks for watching. I'm Sean Okimale. Bye for now.